in the early 90s where they were all written in blackboard and chalk pieces. So when I'm there, my mother's asking me, which branch do you want to take? All right, so I said, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? You will say you only want computer science. So I go there and I look at the board and the computer science next to it, the number is 0. So I'm very happy that there's no computer science because I didn't want to do computer science. Then I looked at all the other branches and I looked at my marks. I had excellent marks in mathematics. I had 58 marks and remember becoming engineer with 58 marks, right? The only thing I had good marks, I don't know why, but I had some 88 or 90 marks in chemistry. I don't know how I got those, right? But when I looked at it and I said, chemistry, I have good marks, and looks like there's something called chemical engineering. They relate to each other, and I chose chemical engineering, right? And I studied engineering because my mother wanted me to become an engineer. And normally people study engineering for 4 years. I studied for 6. I just failed for 2. And and while I was studying, and the year that I failed, you know, Khandan ka naam to completely badnaam, right? And imagine there was a second round of mourning that happened at home, right? Because they thought that doctor to mari gaya, engineer bhi chala gaya shayad. But I'm so glad that I failed that year because that was the year I was jobless. The only thing I was good at, because when I was in school and college, I used to be quite an outstanding student, standing outside the classroom. And I was outstanding simply because I used to talk a lot in schools and college. So what do you do with a kid who talks too much? You put him outside class. And I used to talk. Thankfully, there was one school teacher who completely changed my life. She was a judge for one of my inter-college events. I won that debate because I used to win everything in speaking competitions. So after the competition, she came up to me. I was, 18, 19. She said, why don't you come to my school and teach my children public speaking? And then she said, we will offer you a stipend also. That was pretty interesting. Yeah, and anyways, I was jobless because I'd failed for a year. So I decided to go to a school, and here I am today. You know, started off as a debate teacher and consistently worked with education. But the point that I'm making is that, you know, things around us have changed so dramatically that what started off as a simple speaking part-time job for me went on to become one of the biggest professions that I could ever imagine. A lot of people ask me, how did you choose your career? I sound very intelligent today when I tell them how I made my career moves, how I started my company, one of the largest events, films company. It all sounds very, very cool. But it actually started because I failed in my engineering college. And I cannot thank God enough for having failed. Think about it. What was probably the worst year of my life, when I look back, I'm so glad it was, because it just shaped me to who I am today. But the point that I wanted to make was that the lies which people told me in 10th standard and 12th standard and in engineering, they said, if you complete your engineering, your life is? God damn it, your life begins after education. Yes or no? Our lives begin after education. And I don't know why consistently, generation after generation, parents and teachers keep lying to our kids. And even today, our kids are told that all you have to do is just try and study for another few years and you are set. And that's a big problem. Because what I've realized in the world today is that if you are not learning every single day, you'll be left behind and the world's gone ahead. We need to be teaching our children to learn and consistently learn all their lives. And the world outside changes so much that no matter what you've studied and how much you've studied, it is not going to be sufficient, right? So that's another world that we live in. And finally, the kind of world that I live in is related to something that I wanted to share with you. You know, I've just been lucky that I've traveled the whole world. I've studied in the US, in the UK. I've studied in some phenomenally beautiful colleges, great institutions. In spite of having interacted with some of the greatest teachers that, you know, you and I could hear, or great industrialists and personalities, one of my best lessons that I've learned in life is from my granddad. And my granddad never went to school. And when I was a very little kid, I lost my granddad when I was 7 or 8, when I was very little, 8 years old or something like that. And I remember this incident. every Saturday, Sunday, I used to go to my grandparents' place, like a lot of us did when we were growing up, right? And on a Sunday evening, I would cry profusely because I didn't want to go back home, because Monday morning was, yeah, I didn't want to go to school, right? So every time it was the same story, that everybody will be trying to console me and telling me, go back to your house and you can come back next week. So one of the days, I was crying and my granddad said, you must go back home because tomorrow is school. If you don't study in school, you're not going to become a big man. So I turned around, looked at him and I said, you never went to school, you became a big man, because he was a very successful businessman. He was a timber merchant, very successful in Bangalore. So he looked at me and said that, who told you I didn't go to school? I said, Mummy told me everything, you never went to school. So he said, no, I went to school, I still go to school. So what do you think was the next question I asked him? Which school? Yeah, he said, come next week, I'll show you my school. So the next time when I went back to my grandparents' place, the first thing I saw my grandfather's face, what do you think I asked him? What do you think I asked him? You know, the typical 6-year-old, 7-year-olds, they're not going to leave till you give them an answer, right? So I asked him, show me your school. So he took me to, in his car, and we went to this timber yard. Timber yard, logs of wood all around, big place. So he took me there and I looked at him and I said, this is not a school. I speak Urdu back in Bangalore, and I said, ye to lakdi ki taal hai, right? It's a timber yard. So he said, this is my school. I think the next question which I asked was a very intelligent one. I think I was an intelligent kid. You know what I asked my granddad? If this is your school, who are your teachers? You know what my granddad said? He asked me, what is this? I said, ears. He asked me, what is this? I said, eyes. He said, those are my teachers. I was a very little kid when he told me that. It probably took me 2 or 3 decades to understand what he said. And today I realize that if I keep my eyes and ears open, I have enough and more to learn, to survive and grow in this world. Education is not about what I read in a textbook or inside a classroom. Education is what I see and hear, feel, experience, empathize in the world around me. So the world around us is really changing. So a lot of lies that we tell our children, they're not necessarily very good. That education comes to an end, education comes to a beginning once your schooling and college is done. Now, having said this, I thought let's look at what are the kind of, the second part which I wanted to talk to you about is what are the kinds of skills do children need today? It's a very difficult world, which I just explained to you. It's a very different world. I don't know whether it's difficult or not, but I know it's very different from what you and I grew up. So what are the kind of skills that our children need? We teach a lot of competencies to our children. Competencies of math, of science, skills of writing, skills of reading, skills of speaking. We teach a lot of skills to our children. We teach them competencies. But what a lot of times we fail to teach or fail to focus upon. By the way, whenever I'm giving you analogies like this, you need to remember an analogy which I love of going to a gym. Imagine I go to a gym to work out, right? Every day I go to a gym to work out. So what I do is I work out my legs a lot and I work out my right hand a lot. Left hand, why work it out? Just leave it. How am I going to look after 1 year? How am I going to look after 1 year? Imagine big muscles on my legs and my hands, chest, everywhere. But how's my left hand looking? Distorted, skewed growth, lopsided growth. If you and I had a lens to look at kids getting out of our schools, that's how they look. They've got some parts of their personalities really well developed, and some parts of their personalities, they just didn't focus because why are you playing sport? Focus on math. Why are you studying with your friends? Focus on your own subjects. Think about it. We do a lot of things with our kids which is very skewed growth. What our kids need to learn is a well-rounded personality. When that word is used the next time, remember, it is important, math, science, geography. I'm not saying it's not, but focusing so much on it that our kids are growing up with a very weak left hand and left leg maybe. And the more this becomes stronger, the worse it is for them. Remember that. So what's required is that we focus on and overall development of a child. It's not just about competencies, it's about the character. Don't just teach a child what to write. Tell the child the power writing has. That's the character which determines it. For example, if I teach someone, because I've spent a lot of my life teaching people public speaking and communication, so that's a skill. If I stop at that, I have not completed my duty. I should also teach my children that the same communication skill that you have, you can use it to hurt somebody or to heal somebody. All skills that we teach our children are like knives. You use a knife, right, for a lot of very positive things in our lives, whether it's cooking, whether it is creating, whether it is art, but you can use the same thing to hurt someone. Our job does not just stop with teaching competencies. What our children need is a focus on character, on values, on morals. And look outside when you walk. It's all those educated people who have those so-called degrees who are causing the biggest problems in our society. And if you want a very up-close example for your own lives, I can bet what I'm telling you, I can bet I will be right. You have a lot of parents who come to your school, right? The more educated the parent, the more successful the parent, the more terrible they treat the teachers. The more illiterate the parent, the more rural backgrounds they come from, the more they respect the teachers. Am I right or wrong? Yes. So what did the education teach those parents? It's because they got competencies, they didn't get the character. And remember, character is not one subject that the school introduces and one teacher is going to teach them. Every one of us. When a child walks in, how the peon treats the child, how the lady cleans the school, how the office staff deals with a child, they are all teachers of character to a child. And everyone in their life who they come with. You know, one thing that I've learned after having worked with kids for so long, you cannot teach children, by the way. Seriously. You cannot teach them. But the interesting thing is that children learn. What I can do is I can create a space, an environment where they can learn. So my role is to create those environments. So coming back, the first thing that our children need in today's day and age is that they need to learn to be well-rounded. Not just competencies and the skills that we teach them, we need to be teaching them character as well. The other one, which sounds very old school, though I look very modern and, ride a Harley Davidson, but I believe in a lot of old traditions a lot. Self-awareness. We just don't teach our kid who they are. We teach them everything about the world outside, but very little about their own selves. And a lot of things that we do with our children are so contradictory. All our lives, we've taught our children that if you've done something in your life, somebody outside is going to give you a test, somebody is going to give you marks, and then grade you. So all our lives, we are waiting for somebody outside to tell us how good or bad we are. And we set a very low standard for ourselves. We don't teach our children to evaluate themselves. And one of the most important skills that we need to be teaching our children is to know who they are. It's about self-introspection. By the way, that's not a very boring thing. As a teacher, I do that very beautifully. A lot of times people come and ask me, I took part in the public speaking competition, so where do you think I lost out on the marks? You know what I ask them? Where do you think you lost out? We've got this urge to answer questions as teachers. We love to answer because that's what you've been told. You need to solve all problems. You can't. Teach your children to go back and speak to themselves, to ask for themselves, to introspect. Whether you look at the Vedas or the Puranas, one of the most basic skills that a society needs are men and women who can introspect. Self-confidence, self-esteem, self-belief, all of them are outcomes of this question as to what I think about myself. You don't need to teach self-confidence, by the way. You need to teach your children to talk to themselves. And you do that over a period of time. Ma'am, how is this painting? Sultan, how do you think is the painting? At a very young age. And I think it is okay. It should be better. fine, if you think it's okay, how can you make it better? Get them on that journey. Ma'am, how's my painting? 10 on 10. Great, go. That's the difference between answering questions and teaching them to ask questions. And that brings me to the next point. Our entire education system is about answers, right? Remember, we're teaching answers to our children. We're teaching information and we're evaluating them on the basis of the answers. That's why when I go to an exam, what is given in my hand? What's given? Question paper. And how am I evaluated? On the answers. And all my life I was told that if I give the right answers, then I'm going to do well in life. The moment I step out in the world, no one's asking me questions. I need to ask questions. And any one of you who's successful in anything that you do, ask me, I will tell you. 6, 7 years ago, I set out to make films for education. And there was one very big question that I asked myself. World's largest filmmaking country, which one? India, by far. World's largest young population, which one? India. We make the least number of good films for children. And I asked a question, why? Why do we make such few good films for children? And what I've been doing from the past 6, 7 years is finding an answer to that question, that's all. Have I answered that question? I don't know. But what's driving me is that question. And remember, our entire educational system revolves around answers and answers. We give them grades on answers, we focus on the answers, but believe me, the world outside, and especially the new world that we're living in, our children you need to learn how to teach questions. It might sound like one simple statement. You know what I'm trying to tell you? Take the entire curriculum and syllabus, throw it out, reimagine it entirely, because everything that we're teaching today is about answers. It's not about the questions. But it's not an ideal world. You can't do it tomorrow morning. Can you, in your own small ways and little ways, start encouraging children with your questions rather than, and allowing them to live with the questions? They don't need to find answers. You know, sadly, the more you have entrance exams and the more you have those coaching classes, the more our children are learning to solve, crack. And it's all about how fast you can do it. And life is not about how fast you do it. Life is about how well you do it, right? So this is another interesting thing that I've figured. It's all about the kind of, the questions that we ask our children. Then here's a very beautiful one. We need to encourage our children to fail and be happy about it. We should celebrate failure. I don't know about Mahatma Gandhi or Abraham Lincoln, but I can talk about my own self. Every single time in my life that I've done something which was like a failure, whether I didn't get into medicine, whether I failed at engineering, whether I failed at my first attempt at trying to start a company, every time I failed at something, I've just become a better person. It's the world around me which gets a lot more scared about my failure. Your entire career as a teacher is revolving around one mortal fear. You know what's your mortal fear? Oh my God, my children will fail. You fear that your kids will fail. If I were in your shoes, I'd be happy. If a child failed in 10th or 12th standard, remember there's better stuff lying for him maybe. And by the way, with the kind of system that we live in today, no one's going to fail. Because our boards are going to make everyone pass. And then we got into the next rat race. Everybody has to get first class, everybody above 90%. The point is not that. When I look back at my school days, the most successful ones of my class are not necessarily the ones who got above 90 marks. They're not. Most of you said that you've been teaching for over 10 years. Do you remember your students? Your successful kids are not the ones who were the best in marks. Am I right or wrong? Then why are we still doing that? You know, it's so important that we teach our children that ability to fail, because to fall down, it's natural instinct. If I were a very little kid, 10 months old and 12 months old, and I don't know how to walk, what do? I get up, right? And I wobble, and what happens? I fall. Now imagine a kid is falling like that. What is the natural instinct of the mom to say? If it is in Kannada, beeltiya. If it is in Hindi, gir jayega. Right? We naturally believe that a child is going to fall, so the mother runs to protect the child. I'm so glad that children don't listen to the mothers. In spite of all the mothers telling them that you will fall, they still stand up. That's who we are made of. That's our natural ability to stand up every time we fall, and the next time we try to stand up, we stand up stronger than we did the last time. That's human instinct. And we need to be encouraging that in our children. Remember learning from failure. Failure is a beautiful thing. There's so many inspirational quotes that you and I hear, but when it comes to real life, we don't do that. I'm not saying you tell the children to get on the path of failure. I'm saying that if it happens, how are we going to react to it makes all the difference. Children today, more so than ever before, need to learn how to fail. The other one is the fifth one that I have. The first one was a blend of character and competence. The second was awareness of self. The third one is the ability to fail. The fourth one is creativity and innovation. We don't encourage it in our schools as much as we should, technically, because one question has how many answers? If somebody uses his creativity and innovation and comes up with a different answer, killed. Creativity is killed. But the world outside today values innovation and creativity more than anything else. It's all about creativity and innovation. It's all about how you can do things differently. Everybody wants, every young entrepreneur wants a new idea. Everybody wants a new logo, a new company name, a new business model. Everybody wants a more innovative way of doing things, a more frugal way of doing things, a more economical way and a more practical way of doing things. Everyone's trying to do things differently outside. And a lot of our children feel very lost because for 18 years we've told them, here's the question, here's the answer, here's the method, here's how you need to follow. And the moment they get out, you know what the bosses are asking them? I want you to come up with new ideas. Where will they come up with new ideas? Simple things, but go a long way outside. Along with creativity and innovation, the other thing that the world outside looks for is also teamwork. We create such individuals out of our children. The fifth one is the whole idea of being practical. Rudolf Steiner, right, is a great educational philosopher, and he's written some phenomenal work about education. In case a lot of you remember, the Waldorf system of education was evolved and supported by him. So he says that it's all about doing things practically, right? And a lot of times he uses one very beautiful statement. He says, struggle is essential for learning. Struggle is essential for learning. Struggle is essential for learning. You know what our parents and our teachers are doing? They're going out of their way to make it easy for our children. We are not making it a process which is difficult for them. And we're very proud of this. Right from looking at the way parents are literally feeding the breakfast in the morning, to the air-conditioned bus, to, even tying shoelaces for high school students. It's ridiculous. What are you teaching them? When is that child going to ever have a struggle to do things on their own? Right? We need to be teaching our children this whole idea of doing things, being practical, getting the hands dirty. A lot of times, you give a lot of holiday homework. The holidays are coming up next week. You give holiday homeworks. You know what's the homework you should be giving them? Ask them, how many things that you know that your mother does that you can do? Right? How many of you have gone there and worked for a month in some factory, in some company, in somewhere? How many of you can run the budget of your own house? Think of some practical holiday homeworks. Don't give them stupid stuff that is given to kids to write And you look at their faces and you know that that's not called holiday homework, it's called holiday criminal punishment. Right? So give them stuff which makes them dabble with real life. Tell them stuff like, why don't you go and serve at the temple or in an old age home or at the, and give them grades when they come back the next year. Because somewhere that's what drives parents, right? If you grade the project, parents are very happy. Acha, if I take to orphanage more marks, you'll get, come, I'll take you. I mean, remember the carrot works. If you've got a donkey, you need to give a carrot, it'll come behind you. So parents are going to be like that. So you be smart with what carrots you give, but remember, make your children practical. Let them just walk that path where, you know, they're able to know things and do it very practically. And the last one that you know, this couple of more ones, simple ones. One is about health, right? Do you realize that we are living in the world's most unhealthiest country? In India, we've got the world's highest population of malnutrition children. In India, we've got the world's second highest obese children. What's the point of me becoming a doctor or an engineer, industrialist or an entrepreneur, when I'm not even healthy at 30? What is the point? And remember, as educational institutions, as teachers, we have a responsibility to teach our children about you know, health and being healthy. It's really important that we do that. And the last one about this whole section of what skills our children need is teach them to think big and dream big. There's no tax which Modi is still implemented on dreaming. Why is it that we have to think small? You know what I mean by thinking small? Almost every kid out there, his goal in life is to get a good college and then get a good job and then get a good wife or a good husband and then have kids and then have the kids going to a good school, college, and then figuring out how you're going to live your old age and then figuring out how to die. Almost every one of us are in such a hurry to live a life like that. Look at an average person out there on the street, okay? Now look at an average animal out there on the street. A little dog, a puppy is born, his life revolves around running around, jumping, and then he grows up a little bit, right? He figures out that this tire to that pole is my territory. Yeah, he figures out where to find food. Yeah, and once that's done, he figures out a partner, and then they have little puppies. So his life revolves around protecting the puppies and teaching the puppies how to grow up. And one fine day, have you seen some of these old doggies on the street? They're the old, frail, very unhealthy, and one fine day they die and go. What's the difference between these two lives? Think about it. An average human out there has no better life than a lizard or a dog. It's just that through education, they get a little better bone and a little better gutter. That's what happens. Instead of the gutter, the dog's living in a kennel. Think about it. And what's the aspirations that we have for our children? More and more educated people are contributing to the bigger problems that this world has because we, as educational institutions, have made them very selfish. It's all about me, my homework, my exam, my assignment, my projects, my